Hello, everybody, and welcome to an emergency podcast live with Colin Mitchell. I'm Matthew Brune. How are you doing today, Colin?
I'm doing good.
It doesn't
Brandon.
matter how you're doing,
Okay.
all right? We have something to talk about. We have a lot to talk about because we are 3 days removed from the end of the season. And on this day, Tuesday, November 28th, at around noon, two starters on North Texas offense have entered the transfer portal already. And who knows, by the time we're done with this podcast, there could be two more. But we have to start with Ethan Miner, the starting center for North Texas, and Jamori Maclin, obviously star receiver for North Texas, both entering the transfer portal. Where do you want to start? What do you want to talk about? I mean, we just did a whole podcast on
saying how
whenever
Jamori
Sunday
Maclin wouldn't leave.
saying we hoped that they wouldn't be able to leave. Honestly, like,
Right.
sorry.
But then at the very end of like our research or quote unquote live research, we're like, oh well, he was in college for 4 years, so maybe he can graduate transfer.
So yeah.
I guess we still don't really know the details on that, I guess, but he's transferring regardless, so it doesn't really make a difference. We'll just start with Jamori Maclin because I think that's the hot button topic, right?
Yes.
Listen, we know this is the world in which we now live in. Jair Shorter left, and I know that Jamori Maclin's probably better than Jair Shorter was.
Yeah.
But you just gotta keep rolling with the punches. I mean, this was clearly something that he was going to do regardless, right? Like this isn't something you decide over the last 2 days. Obviously, I feel like.
Well, okay. Here's. Sorry to cut you off. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
but I think you can play off of this. When I saw this year more than last year and the year before, when NIL has been in play, it's kind of always been under the table, not under the table, but it hasn't been reported the way it's being reported this year. I don't know if you saw Cameron Ward, the Washington State quarterback who was at Incarnate Word with Eric Morris.
Mm-hmm.
It's been reported he has 10 plus offers of $1 million to go play at a school of his choice, right? Including like A&M, Notre Dame, etc. It feels like it has been accelerated to a degree to where as soon as the season ended, these calls have no longer been like feelers. They have been offers.
Right.
And that's the biggest difference right now is Jamori Maclin's season ended on Saturday. Fill in the blank team that needs a receiver says, we got $500K. Come play for us.
So you don't think it was a decision that he was mulling?
This is not a decision that maybe he thought in the back of his mind, like, hey, I want to get back to the SEC. He came from Missouri. He's like, I see my boys Luther Burden over there, like playing well. I want to go back to the SEC and make his name there. That maybe has been in his head for a while. I understand that. But the actual ability to make money and then have everything happen so quickly.
Yeah.
I think that happened in the past 2-3 days.
Really?
Once the season ended, Monday, Sunday night, Monday morning, Monday afternoon, he probably had 5 different teams hit his phone. That's the world we live in.
That seems insane to think
about. That's the world we're living in right now. Cameron Ward's season ended 2 days ago, and he has 10 offers of $1 million to go play.
Yeah.
At this point, it's probably 20 offers of $1 million to go play.
Yeah.
Like, that's the world we're living in right now. And so I remember we had Seth Luttrell on. We've talked about it at length when the portal started being a thing where, like, it's a give and take. You give some great players away, but then you take some players that, are drop downs or whatnot, like a Jamori Maclin, right? Well, now we're at the point where you take the drop downs like Jamori Maclin, and once they're graduate transfers, they're gone again.
Right.
So now you only have them for 1 or 2 years. And so now you're really playing an unfair game because now the drop downs aren't even staying with you. If you hit on the drop downs, you lose them too.
Well, here's a question. If you have a drop down, I guess you could only leave again if you were a graduate transfer, correct?
So that's what I'm saying is Maclin, whatever, 2-3 years at 2 years at Missouri, 1 year in North Texas, had a year in, what was it, JUCO? Is that what it was?
Brune, yeah.
Am I thinking?
That was Rogers. He had 2 at Missouri. He didn't play 1 year.
Yeah, so
that's what it was.
Regardless, like if you get a guy after 2 years and maybe they graduate early after year 3 or year 4, whatever, they graduate transfer out. Like that's the problem. And so it, in one sense, the NCAA did solve the problem of saying, all right, you can't just bounce from school to school to school. But with the graduate transfer being a thing and players being able to graduate 3 or 4 years, it basically is. Like it basically is you are able to go wherever you want. If you're able to change schools twice in the span of 4 years,
yeah.
like what's the difference between changing schools 3 times in 4 years? Like it has become more so, in my opinion, for North Texas, and I think I have good context on this situation because I deal with LSU and North Texas, which are very different ends of the spectrum. Not saying
Right.
North Texas is at the bottom of the spectrum by any means, but somewhere like the 80 to 100 range in terms of programs in the country, and then LSU is thinking about who it can buy right now.
Right.
North Texas is trying to keep who they have, and there is no fear from LSU in losing a starter. There is all fear from every other school, 98% of schools in the country, in losing Jamori Maclin, Chandler Rogers. Like that is the problem, and I do think it is a problem right now. And eventually, in 5-10 years, however long, I think it will be, the coaches will have had enough to a point where you'll end up having either a contract or you'll have type of employment type stuff. Like you will have a change, but until that happens, North Texas will continuously get a player either from the portal or from recruiting, have a good year, and lose them.
Here's a question. Obviously, the NIL is a new thing, but graduate transfer, as you already mentioned, hasn't been a new thing. How is this any different than in the past when you have a graduate transfer? Obviously, you can transfer once, and you don't have to sit. But in Jamori Maclin's case, like he's already older. You only really kind of expected to have him for 2 years, anyways. You know what I mean? Like obviously, you don't want to lose him.
The
And he
difference
still has eligibility.
is Jamori Maclin, if he would have stayed at Missouri next year, he would have been leaving this year, right? So then he comes to North Texas for 1 year as a graduate transfer and whatnot. Like the difference is you can't leave and go audition for North Texas for a year and then go back to the SEC.
That's
Like,
fair.
yes, you could have left a grad transfer, but if you're Jalen Guyton, Rico Bussey or whatnot, you had to play at least 3, probably 4 years to get your degree, and then you can leave. This was a 2-year audition, sorry, for Maclin. The first year he didn't play much. This year he played. So that's the difference. And so it is a really precarious spot. And now we said, I think pivoting a little bit, we said on the last podcast, funnel all of your NIL money you have at North Texas, which we'll talk about that separately, how much they should have. But funnel all of your NIL money to 2 players, Rogers and Maclin.
Now 1.
Well, Maclin is gone.
Yeah.
All of it should be going to Rogers.
Yeah.
Every dime. I don't care if it makes him the most hated player in the locker room. Which I don't think it would. He's a nice guy, but I'm saying like that's always the thing with people who are like, oh, one player's getting paid more than the other. I don't give a damn. Keep him at quarterback by all means necessary. If you have X amount of dollars, just throw it all to him. Just be like, hey, we'll get you on a Chicken Express commercial. We'll get you on everything. We'll put you on
what's
TV.
crazy? You know what's crazy about all this is now we're no longer looking at a player's eligibility left in playing sense, but we're looking at what they are academically. Like, are they a sophomore? Are they a junior academically? You know what I mean? Because I mean, we had this conversation the other day with Jamori Maclin. We're like, well, maybe he could graduate transfer, and then he did. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, you got to throw everything at Chandler Rogers, possibly the best football player in the American, and he just basically salvaged your season for you. How do you think North Texas navigates that, though, with how much money, whether it's all of it or most of it? How do they navigate replacing a Jamori Maclin?
I don't think you're worried about I mean, receivers are a big deal, obviously, and I don't think this receiving core was great outside of Maclin. But you don't have any other players that should be transferring for NIL reasons, right? Like Damon Ward, Trey Cleveland, Landon Sides, Smart. Like you have enough players here to build a receiving core that is capable, but the quarterback position is now more important than that. Like if you were able to keep Maclin, and let's say you, in theory, like if you needed to keep one of Maclin or Rogers, That's my opinion. And so I do think without Maclin, you have a okay receiving core, but if you have Rodgers, obviously it makes it to where it doesn't really matter. Right. So that's where I'm like, at the end of the day, however much you have, whatever you can do in terms of keeping players, in terms of NIL, just to be competitive with one, because we're talking A&M, whatever teams, Oklahoma, yada, 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 have enough to offer 10 players X amount of dollars. You just need to match on the one. You need to match on Chandler Rogers. That is what this comes down to. That this has completely changed, and that's why I mentioned to start off like the Cameron Ward thing. This is a different landscape, and it has been so accelerated that I bet by next year we are starting to hear even more offers and like how quickly they come, and just the reporting of this has happened so fast, and quarterbacks are getting in the portal even faster. Players are leaving even faster. Like this has just been it's been a mess.
How do you, because obviously when you look at like the NFL, NBA, whatever, how much do you think this will affect players that are not necessarily stars, but like say for example a team sees Landon Sides and goes, oh, he's going to be a really good player.
That's
What
it.
what stops them from getting a developmental?
I don't know. I don't
throwing
know if
money at
they'll
that.
ever. I don't know if they'll ever reach that point.
But why not?
I think they believe in their own recruits more than they do North Texas recruits. Right. Like I think that's where
That's fair.
if I don't even want to keep using A&M in Oklahoma, but like if Oklahoma is like, oh, Landon Sides got a really good year in North Texas.
Well, I'm thinking about other mid majors like Memphis, even though they're technically they have a lot of money. Or if you even look at right now, like an SMU now is also in the same conference. Like you have schools in this conference that make a lot more money. Overall,
SMU is an interesting point because Cam Robertson went there last year.
Yeah.
And Jalen Davis Robinson from LSU went there last year. Like they have actually gotten some younger players. So SMU mid-major wise it's an interesting discussion. But I don't think North Texas, this gets to my third topic, I guess, is North Texas shouldn't be that far behind in NIL from other schools in the American. Now that SMU's gone, removing SMU from the conversation, North Texas should not be far behind, if at all, of the teams in the American right now. Because going back to the point of throwing all your money at Chandler Rogers, look at what UTSA did, right? With Frank Harris.
Yeah.
All of the money. Everything they got, card dealerships, sponsorships, everything went to Frank Harris.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do. UTSA, I made fun of them before about their practice facilities, their money, their basketball gym, all that stuff. They have done it right to where they hit on the coach and they hit on the quarterback. We'll figure out the rest later.
Yeah.
Pay them all of our money to make us good. And they've been good now for 3 or 4 straight years. And that's what North Texas, that's what you as a mid-major program in the American has to do. You have to hit on the coach, hit on the quarterback. When you get them, you pay them the most money possible to try to keep them. Jeff Traylor is going to get $2 million more this year to go pay his assistant coaches. Like that's what you kind of have to do if you're going to do this. If you're going to put it all in on football. Now, North Texas is obviously much more competitive than UTSA in every other sport. So that
affects other sports though right now.
But also North Texas has more money than UTSA, which goes back to what we've been saying year after year is North Texas should have higher expectations. Not saying they should be, Tulane or Memphis even of winning like the conference every year, but you should have higher expectations and going 6-6 and 7-5 under Seth Luttrell because you do have the money and the resources that most other teams in the American don't, or you're at least on par with them. So, with that being said, you saw what UTSA did with Frank Harris. Y'all have as much money, if not more money, than UTSA. Now, can you build connections with different places to get maybe more money or their sponsorships, dealers, like deals, stuff like that? Can you go out of your way? You have to be. This is an unprecedented time.
Yeah.
This you need to think outside the box here. Hire me, hire Colin, hire somebody that will start thinking outside the box here because you can't keep losing players.
Here's an interesting thing, though, and as we compare North Texas against UTSA, I feel like has a certain, that's their only football team. Whereas I think Denton isn't as passionate. So
Yes.
we're talking about these car dealerships, the city getting around Frank Harris, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
How does Denton replicate that? Because obviously if you put more money toward football, and yes, I know North Texas has a lot more money than UTSA, it's going to start affecting other things. You know, we can get to basketball once that needs to get there, but like Aaron Scott, for example, like you have players like that. And then not only that, how much does that hamper your development from wanting to get where you are in the American in general, with teams taking players away?
I see. I agree with you, and then like North Texas has to be more diverse in how it spends its money than UTSA. UTSA has thrown all the money at football and says we'll figure out the rest later. We're not firing Henson. We're just going to figure it out. I think North Texas can afford to protect one player every year in the NIL. Yeah. They should be able to do that. Now, Jared Mosley, if you're listening to this and I'm wrong, you can give me a call and say, no, we don't have money. We can't afford to stop Rogers. And maybe North Texas can. Maybe somebody comes and gives Rogers $1 million, and the best North Texas can do is $500,000.
Yeah.
And he takes it. All right. Throw your hands up. You lose. But ultimately, if that's the case, then we will be in this cycle every single year. Every player that has a good year for North Texas will be gone. If that's the case, if you can't protect one player, that's all I want. I just want to protect one. UTSA did it. They protected one. And like you said, it's a different situation with the way that San Antonio is made up. But like that's the goal. If we can't do that, if we can't match UTSA in that regard, it's going to be a long process to figure out where we stack up in the American and in NIL until things get like I said, like until players become employees. Like that's the only hope eventually.
Well, how does that change anything though, really?
What, becoming employees is you're locked in for.
You mean like contracts?
Yeah.
Like you sign like a
3-year contract.
Yeah, you can't leave unless this.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I mean, if you and if JD actually brought it up on Twitter, I thought it was a good point. It's like if a player leaves, the other school has to pay you like a buyout type thing. Like kind of with coaches. Like it's the same transactional stuff. Like if you get Rogers, all right, well you have to pay like this and you have to pay a buyout. Kind of like in soccer. I think soccer is actually probably a better
probably the best
way of phrasing it because players can get bought out like that of their contracts. So like that's eventually I think going to be the end goal. That is a much bigger, broader conversation that I'm not even super familiar with. But like I'm saying in this era right now, the way that things are going, I thought last year was kind of crazy. This year we're 3 days into the off season, and I've already seen crazier stuff than I've seen last year. So, like maybe Rogers will, maybe he won't. Will we ever know if he gets a bag? I hope we do. I hope North Texas, if they do give him everything, they make it very abundantly clear, just like they did with Frank Harris, just like UTSA did with Frank Harris.
Yeah.
Put him in a damn car dealership and have him sign the contract for all I care.
Yeah.
Like this is a different game. Everybody needs to understand this is a different game that everybody's playing right now. So you have to compete with other teams in the American, and in order to do that, you have to keep, in my opinion, one player every year. So,
yeah, it is interesting because I feel like it's almost there's no middle ground anymore. You either have to commit to athletics right now, football, or you just don't.
I agree.
And then you either fall to the bottom or you float to the top.
I mean, look, I said when North Texas won the NIT, I think North Texas needs to just dive into basketball, and I still kind of stand by that, or at least all the sports, maybe outside of football. But if we're playing the game, we got to play the game. Like you said, you're either all in on football or you're not.
Well, I mean, I don't even mean just football. I mean overall. I mean, I guess just
I think you have to choose. I think we are out of time in college athletics where mid-major programs, I'll say even 80% of programs in the country, have to choose between football and all the other sports, non-revenue sports. That's the hard part. And most of them will choose football, which I think is probably the right choice. I'm just saying North Texas, I don't know. I think it's an interesting debate that could be had to say, what if our men's basketball team could be elite? Like, what if men's basketball could be, I don't even know, Providence.
Basically, like, what do you do?
St. John's.
What does
like
North Texas
Dayton.
look like if they do what UTSA did, but for basketball?
Exactly. Like, what if North Texas was Dayton, St. John's, VCU, or not VCU? I mean, like Butler, like
basketball school,
a basketball school.
Yeah.
And you continue to fund, like, obviously softball, get a baseball team, like all that stuff. And you just kind of play like, I think there's a very interesting debate to be had there. Now, will that ever happen? Probably not, because we're in Texas and football is just kind of how it goes.
Right.
But if things keep going at this rate where you lose players every single year, I'm asking, if we're in 2 years and the same thing happens every year, I'm going to ask, what's the point? Because we just went 5-7 3 years in a row and we lose our best player every single year.
Yeah.
That's going to piss me off. And if I'm Jared Mosley, I'm like, what is the point? Why are we throwing money at something that we lose in and that we lose our best players in every year?
Yeah.
It's a bigger conversation to be had, but that's kind of just where my mind goes from North Texas side things.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
That's my rant.
Anyways, Ethan Miner is also gone.
And I actually think Ethan Miner is a decent loss. Like, I think they're gonna be fine because center it's an important position, but he was the second ranked. I think he was behind Rogers, the second highest rated PFF graded player on the offense. So shout out to him. And I'm sure he saw that too, and he's gonna try to parlay that into a job somewhere. But yeah, Maclin is the news. We'll see what else comes out. There's no other, like, is there any player that could leave that would have you worried? Would a day leaving have you worried?
I think that this isn't a knock on a day or anything, but I think that running backs in general are easier to replace than other skill positions.
Give me Ragsdale back off injury. Give me Attaway.
Foster. I mean, both
Johnson.
of them could leave, right? But I'm less worried about that than I am losing a receiver.
Yep.
Other positions, I can't. I mean,
Gabe Blair.
Sure.
Defensively, I don't care.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I was thinking of. I was like, defensively, I can't think of anyone. I mean, your best defensive player is probably Tejada. Yeah, so you lose Ridge, and it's like, well, we lost a pretty good corner, So, I mean, I think one last thing. I don't know if there's going to be more type of Jamori Maclin type players that need to come down. I think it's the challenge more so is going to be dealing with roster turnover year after year than it is going to be having to pay a player.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. It's like you now it becomes, can you every single year, if this is what we're doing every year, can you find the Jamori Maclin that drops down every year? Can you find
the Chandler Rogers? I mean, Chandler Rogers was at ULM.
Now that's the other part is, can you also find, like, you have to hit on these now.
Yeah.
If we're losing them every year, you have to hit on it every year. That is very, very, very challenging to do, to hit on that every single year. So, I mean, defensively, I think, like, portal-wise, while we're on the portal topic, like, they're going to need to add a lot of defensive portal players. Will it work? I have no idea. But you have to add a lot of defensive players from the portal, like 10.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately 10. So, I don't know. It's an interesting discussion for sure, but I think we've gone long enough. 23 minutes. Yeah, that's all we got. Hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll be back. I mean, heck, if something happens tomorrow, we'll be back tomorrow for all I know. There's only one player that could do that, but we'll see if that.
Well, let's not speak that into existence.
Knock on wood. But yeah, throw the bag at Chandler. We'll be back whenever that is. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Check us out on Twitter or X, Green Room UNT. And we'll talk to you later.